So in the United States, that might be considered a come on, and you might be a little curious about what somebody meant or what their intentions were if they would do that with you. But in Chile, it's actually a way of showing direction as opposed to pointing or using your fingers, which is considered weird or rude. So Chile is a country that's very similar to the United States. It is interested in social justice, and the free market economy is one of their main principles. I've done some research on the country of Chile using the resources that were available with the DCCD library, including the Geert Hofstetter Cultural Comparison Tool, some New York Times articles, as well as one of the encyclopedias that was available. So today I want to share with you a little bit about some of the customs, communication behaviors, and some of the current events that are occurring in the country. So let me start by sharing a little bit about life in Chile today with you. So Chile is a modern economy, and the populace is known for being sharp and witty. And one of their most famous poets, Pablo Neruda, has actually won the Nobel Prize. It is a country of outstanding beauty and varied geography. And according to Culturegrams Online, in their entry for Chile, which was updated in May 2019, there's a lot of secular customs. And as far as eating habits are concerned, their main meal is eaten at midday, and there's a little bit of a European carryover where they have tea time later in the afternoon. So this is kind of an upper class aristocracy thing, and once you get out into some of the more rural parts of the country, that's not as common, but it's still something that kind of the upper crust observes. And they're also really famous for a lot of their wines, South American wines. In fact, pisco, which is a type of grape brandy, is their national drink of choice. And there is some cultural tensions, and this is kind of one of those places where it's similar to the United States, in between some of the indigenous people and the main population percentage, which is of European descent. So there is still that kind of indigenous white cultural tension that goes off, and there is some correlation as far as opportunities for economic mobility, education, those types of things as well. Having said that, Chile is known for having a large middle class, and there is a lot less income inequality compared to other South American and Central American countries. And overall, the entire populace really has this desire for progress and social justice, and that's a remnant from living under several dictatorships over the past 50 years or so, and the country wanting to kind of put that behind them and get everybody onto an equal playing field. Also, much like some of their South American, Central American, Latin American counterparts, they're very laid back with their time. So in this way, you could classify them as a polychronistic culture, where being 30, 60 minutes late for personal engagements is not looked down upon and almost expected, although that is less pronounced in workplace settings. So now that you know a little bit about Chilean culture, let me share some about how Chileans communicate with each other. So Spanish is obviously the most spoken language, but just like in a lot of other Latin American countries, there is some variation in between what words are used. And Chileans are known for being a little bit more respectful and courteous, a little bit more formal, and that shows up in the way that they use the formal version of you, which in Spanish is usted, compared to some other countries like Mexico or El Salvador. Very similar to other Latin American countries, the family structure is very intergenerational, so there's a focus, and most people do know their grandparents. However, Chile has the lowest birth rate of any Latin American country in the world, so most people only have one or two siblings, and so in that way it's a little bit more similar to the United States, and there's this juxtaposition between a large extended intergenerational family but also a smaller nuclear family unit that people have. And I think this juxtaposition, this tension, has led to some of the collectivistic tendencies of the culture. So they're not so much concerned about just the family itself. There are other larger in-groups that they ascribe to and look out for. And this is pretty reflected in some of the social medicine programs and how they pride themselves on that. And again, taking care of each other that are in that same in-group. And according to the Geert Hofstetter comparison tool, it actually has a really low score on individualism. And again, that kind of is more about the family unit itself being smaller and having to extend that family and extend that concern beyond into other generations and then other parts of society as well. So having talked a little bit about Chilean communication behaviors, I think it's important that you understand some of the current events that are transpiring in Chile at the moment. And so currently there are a lot of protests and demonstrations. They're revolving around social inequality and market policies. The current constitution, when it was adopted, was done under a dictatorship, moving into kind of a more democratic, a modern democracy, let's say, but it was all done without the input of the people. So that tends to be the issue right now, is that the government doesn't have the rights under the Constitution to actually make changes that the people are interested and invested in, and the people don't feel like they ever had input. So that is the basis of the demonstrations that are happening right now. And according to Pascal Bonifay of the New York Times in his November 11th, 2019 article entitled "Chile's President Says He Will Support a New Constitution," over the past month or so, there have been thousands of people that have been arrested, injured by police, and 5 people have even been killed. And so a lot of people are equating this social uprising to what happened in the Arab Spring, and the fact that it's a grassroots type of movement, so there's no one specific leader, and most of the organizing is happening via social media. So people are reaching out, and it tends to be centered in the capital, but these demonstrations are happening throughout the entire country. But again, most recently the president did agree to begin to adopt a new constitution, and they're going to have kind of town halls throughout the country so that they can have a little bit more direct input from the people on what they want that to look like, so that the government actually has the powers to intervene into the economy in a way that promotes social equality, in a way that is going to hopefully even out some of those issues that they have around access to education and upward economic mobility. So in conclusion, I would say Chile is a diverse and modern economy. It has a pretty high standard of living, especially for Latin American countries. Some people really consider it and Argentina to be an extension of European colonialism. So you have that same type of aristocracy that's present and that same kind of higher standard of living. And the populace, mostly due to living under a dictatorship for 50 years or so, is really concerned with social inequality, and corruption is a lot less pronounced than it is in countries, say, like Colombia or Venezuela or certain Central American countries. And I thought it was interesting how Chileans share some American ideals as far as upward mobility and equal opportunity, but at the same time that was juxtaposed with classical or traditional Latin American ideals, such as the focus on the family and that collectivistic nature. And having seen some of the photos and seen some of the varied topography, some of the exotic locales, it seems like a place that I would be very interested in visiting in the near future. So thank you.